Kate looked up from her computer screen and frowned as Jack walked into the meeting room with his perfect smile and confident stride. 3 years of working in the same marketing firm, and he still managed to get under her skin like no one else. He caught her gaze and winked. She quickly looked away, pretending to focus on her presentation notes. "Ready to lose this client more?" Jack asked as he took a seat across from her, his blue eyes sparkling with challenge. "In your dreams, Parker," Kate replied, tossing her long brown hair over her shoulder. "My team has been preparing for weeks." Their boss Tom cleared his throat as he entered the room. "Good, you're both here. As you know, the Wilson account is huge. They're looking for fresh ideas, so I've decided to have your teams compete for the pitch." He looked between them. "May the best team win." After the meeting, Kate gathered her things, feeling Jack's eyes on her. She wore a pencil skirt that hugged her curves perfectly, not that she had dressed for him, of course. "Drinks later to celebrate my future win?" Jack teased, leaning against the doorframe. "Don't you mean to drown your sorrows when I beat you?" Kate shot back, brushing past him. Their arms touched briefly, sending an unwelcome tingle through her body. That evening, most of the office gathered at the corner bar, their usual Friday hangout. Kate sat with her team, laughing as they discussed strategy. She couldn't help noticing Jack at the other end of the bar, his shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms as he played darts with his team. After her second glass of wine, Kate went to order another drink. Jack appeared beside her, his cologne making her momentarily dizzy. "2 more please," he told the bartender, then turned to Kate. "1 for my worthy opponent." "Thanks," she said, accepting the glass. "Trying to get me drunk to steal my ideas?" He chuckled, moving closer. "I don't need your ideas to win, Kate." Their coworker, Lisa, suddenly appeared between them. "Oh my God, the tension between you two is killing all of us," she announced loudly, clearly tipsy. "Why don't you just sleep together already?" Kate nearly choked on her drink. "Lisa?" "What? Everyone sees it," Lisa continued. "Right, guys?" To Kate's horror, several colleagues nodded in agreement. Jack looked equally uncomfortable, running a hand through his dark hair. "I have a brilliant idea," announced Mark from accounting, raising his beer. "A little wager to make this competition more interesting." "No," Kate said firmly, but no one listened. "Whoever loses the pitch has to ask the winner out on a date," Mark declared. A real date, dinner, wine, the works. The office erupted in cheers and whistles. Kate felt her cheeks burning as Jack's eyes met hers. "Unless you're scared?" he challenged quietly, so only she could hear. Something stirred inside Kate, a mix of competitive spirit and something else she refused to name. "You wish, Parker. I hope you have a nice suit for our date, because you're definitely going to lose." His eyes darkened as he leaned in. "Don't be so sure. I look forward to seeing you all dressed up for me. It's a bet," she whispered, holding out her hand. Jack took it, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. "Deal." Their colleagues whooped and clinked glasses around them, but Kate barely noticed. All she could feel was the warmth of Jack's hand and the dangerous thrill running through her veins. This was just another competition, she told herself. Just another chance to beat Jack Parker. But as she drove home later that night, all she could think about was the possibility of losing, and whether losing might actually feel like winning this time. Monday morning came too quickly. Kate arrived at the office early, hoping to get some quiet time before the building filled with people, especially before Jack arrived. But as she rounded the corner to her desk, she spotted him already there, focused on his computer screen, a coffee mug in hand. He looked up as she approached, his eyes taking in her fitted blue dress. "Good weekend?" he asked, leaning back in his chair. "Very productive," she lied. In truth, she had spent most of it thinking about their bet and trying to ignore the flutter in her stomach whenever she remembered his touch. "Same here. My team has some killer ideas," Jack said with a confident smile that made Kate want to both slap him and kiss him at the same time. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of meetings and late nights. Kate pushed her team harder than ever, determined to win. She often stayed at the office past 9, surrounded by concept boards and market research. On Wednesday night, thinking she was alone, Kate kicked off her heels and let her hair down, stretching her tired muscles. The sound of the break room microwave startled her. Padding barefoot down the hall, She found Jack making instant noodles, his tie loosened, top button undone. "Dinner of champions?" she teased, leaning against the doorway. He turned, looking surprised but pleased to see her. "Best I could do. You hungry?" Kate's stomach growled in response. She hadn't eaten since lunch. "I have enough for two," Jack offered, pulling out another cup of noodles. They sat at the small table, slurping noodles in comfortable silence. Kate noticed the shadow of stubble on Jack's jaw, the way his eyes looked softer without the audience of their coworkers. "Why marketing?" she asked suddenly. Jack seemed surprised by the personal question. "I like the psychology of it. Understanding what makes people want things." His eyes met hers. "What about you?" "I like telling stories, finding the right words to make people feel something." "You're good at that," he admitted. "Your campaign for the sports drink last year was brilliant." Kate felt a warm glow at his praise. "Thanks. Your travel agency rebrand wasn't terrible either." Kate arrived early on Friday morning, a large coffee in hand, determined to focus solely on work. She had avoided Jack for the past 2 days, making excuses to skip meetings where he would be present. But today they had a progress review with Tom, and there was no way to avoid him. She was reviewing her notes when Jack walked in, looking unfairly handsome in a dark gray suit. Their eyes met briefly before Kate looked away, pretending to be absorbed in her papers. "Morning," he said, taking the seat next to her instead of across the table as usual. "Morning," she replied, trying to ignore the scent of his cologne. Tom arrived moments later, and the meeting began. Kate presented her team's concepts first, speaking confidently despite being acutely aware of Jack watching her. When it was his turn, Kate had to admit his ideas were good. Really good. The competition was going to be closer than she had hoped. As the meeting ended, Tom looked pleased. "Great work, both of you. The client will be impressed either way. Remember, final presentations are next Thursday." Kate gathered her things quickly, planning a swift exit, but Jack caught up with her in the hallway. "We need to talk," he said quietly, his hand on her arm guiding her toward an empty conference room. "About what?" she asked, even as she allowed him to lead her inside. He closed the door behind them. "You know what?" Jack said, standing closer than necessary. "You've been avoiding me." Kate crossed her arms. "I've been busy. Some of us take this competition seriously." "That's not it," he said, his voice low. "It's about what almost happened the other night." "Nothing happened," Kate insisted, though her racing heart betrayed her. "But it could have." Jack stepped closer. "And you wanted it to. I could see it in your eyes." "You're imagining things," she said, backing up until she felt the edge of the table behind her. Jack shook his head, moving into her space. "I don't think so. I think you want this as much as I do." "Want what?" she whispered, though she knew exactly what he meant. Instead of answering, Jack closed the final distance between them, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that started gentle but quickly turned hungry. Kate knew she should push him away, but instead, her hands moved to his chest, then slid up to his shoulders, pulling him closer. His hands found her waist, then moved lower, lifting her slightly to sit on the edge of the table. Kate parted her legs, allowing him to step between them as the kiss deepened. She felt dizzy with want, months, years of tension finally breaking. Jack's lips moved to her neck, and Kate gasped, her fingers threading through his hair. "We shouldn't," she managed to say, even as she tilted her head to give him better access. "I know," he murmured against her skin, his hands sliding up her thighs, pushing her skirt higher. "Tell me to stop." Kate knew she should. This was beyond unprofessional, but the feel of his hands on her body, the heat of his mouth on her neck, she couldn't bring herself to end it. A loud knock on the door jolted them apart. "Kate? You in there? We need to go over the graphics," called her teammate Alex from the other side. They froze, staring at each other, both breathing hard. Kate's lipstick was smeared across Jack's mouth, his hair disheveled from her fingers. She quickly adjusted her skirt and wiped at her lips. "Just a minute," she called, her voice surprisingly steady. Jack stepped back, looking both frustrated and amused. "This isn't over," he whispered. "It has to be," Kate replied, though without much conviction. "We're competitors, Jack." This was a mistake. "Didn't feel like a mistake to me," he said, his eyes still dark with desire. Kate straightened her clothes and moved to the door. "The bet still stands. Nothing has changed. As she walked out to meet Alex, everything had changed. The game had taken a dangerous new turn, and Kate wasn't sure how to play it anymore. All she knew was that she wanted Jack Parker more than she had ever wanted to win any competition. The weekend passed in a blur of work and unwanted thoughts of Jack. Kate tried to focus on finalizing her presentation, but memories of their kiss kept distracting her. By Monday morning, she had convinced herself she could handle seeing him professionally. She was wrong. Jack was in the break room when she went for her morning coffee. He looked up and smiled, that confident smile that made her stomach flip. "Good weekend?" he asked, leaning against the counter while she poured her coffee. "Fine," she replied, trying to sound casual. "Yours?" "Would have been better if you'd answered my texts," he said quietly. Kate had seen his messages but couldn't bring herself to respond. "I was busy." Jack moved closer, his voice low. "Too busy to think about what happened." It was a mistake, Kate insisted, though her body reacted to his nearness. "Keep telling yourself that," he replied, his eyes dropping to her lips. Before she could respond, her teammate Megan walked in. Kate used the opportunity to escape, heart pounding. Later that day, Kate was preparing for a pre-presentation meeting when she noticed Jack walking toward the conference room with a coffee cup. As he passed her desk, he stumbled slightly, spilling coffee down the front of her white blouse. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," he said, grabbing tissues from her desk. Kate jumped up, feeling the hot liquid soak through to her skin. "Jack, this is my presentation outfit." "It was an accident," he said, though his eyes held a mischievous glint as he handed her the tissues. "There's a company shirt in the supply closet you can change into." Kate glared at him, suspecting this accident was deliberate. "The meeting starts in 5 minutes. "Better hurry then," he replied with a grin. In the bathroom, Kate assessed the damage. The coffee had left a large brown stain across her chest. With no choice, she hurried to the supply closet and found the company shirt, a fitted polo with the company logo. It was at least one size too small. She changed quickly and rushed to the meeting, aware of how the tight shirt emphasized her curves. When she entered the room, Jack's eyes widened, his gaze lingering on her chest before meeting her eyes with a satisfied smile. "Sorry I'm late," she said to Tom, trying to ignore Jack. Small wardrobe issue. Throughout the meeting, Kate felt Jack's eyes on her. Every time she leaned forward to point at something on the presentation board, the shirt pulled tighter. She knew exactly what he was doing, trying to distract her, to throw her off her game. Two could play that game. After the meeting, Kate walked directly to Jack's desk. "That wasn't an accident," she accused quietly. "I don't know what you mean," he replied innocently, though his eyes gleamed. "But that shirt looks great on you." Kate leaned down, placing her hands on his desk, giving him a clear view down her shirt. "You think you're clever, don't you?" Jack's eyes darkened as he looked up at her. "Just playing the game, Kate." "Well, get ready to lose," she whispered, deliberately licking her lips. She saw his throat work as he swallowed. "We'll see about that," he replied, his voice slightly hoarse. Kate straightened up, smoothing her hands down the tight shirt. "The presentation is in 2 days. May the best person win." She turned and walked away, putting an extra sway in her hips, feeling his eyes on her the whole way. Back at her desk, Kate's phone buzzed with a text from Jack. "Dirty play more? I like it." She smiled to herself. The stakes were definitely getting higher, and Kate was starting to think that winning might not be as satisfying as giving in to what they both clearly wanted. But her competitive nature wouldn't let her surrender just yet. First, the presentation. Then maybe she would see where this game of desire might lead. As she returned to her work, Kate found herself hoping, for the first time, that Jack's presentation might be just as good as hers, because losing to him might actually be the most exciting outcome of all. Thursday morning arrived, and Kate stood in front of her bathroom mirror, smoothing down her red dress. She had chosen it carefully, professional enough for the presentation but fitted in all the right places. Her hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders, and her makeup was flawless. If she was going to win this competition, she would look perfect doing it. At the office, nervous energy filled the air. Kate's team gathered around her desk, going over last-minute details. Jack and his team were huddled in the conference room across the hall. Through the glass walls, Kate could see him gesturing confidently, looking sharp in his dark blue suit. He glanced up and caught her watching. She didn't look away this time, holding his gaze until he smiled and returned to his team. Tom appeared at her desk. "The clients are here. You're presenting first, Kate." She nodded, gathering her materials. "We're ready." The main conference room was intimidating with the Wilson executives seated around the large table. Kate set up her presentation, conscious of Jack slipping into the back of the room to watch. Taking a deep breath, she began. For the next 20 minutes, Kate was in her element, presenting her team's ideas with passion and precision. She could feel Jack's eyes on her the entire time, but instead of making her nervous, it fueled her performance. When she finished, the clients asked thoughtful questions, nodding with interest. Kate answered confidently, knowing she had done well. As she gathered her things, Jack approached, leaning close. "Impressive," he whispered, "but not unbeatable." "Good luck trying," she replied, brushing past him with a smile. Kate sat in the back during Jack's presentation, watching him work the room with natural charm. His ideas were innovative, his delivery smooth. The clients seemed equally engaged. Kate felt a mix of competitive frustration and unwilling admiration. He really was good at his job. When both presentations were complete, the clients asked to speak privately with Tom. The teams waited anxiously in their respective areas, stealing glances across the hall at each other. "You were amazing," Megan told Kate. "We definitely won." Jack's team had some solid concepts, Kate admitted. It could go either way. After what felt like hours, Tom emerged from the meeting room. Instead of coming to either team, he called both Kate and Jack to his office. "Close the door," he said once they were inside. Kate stood nervously beside Jack, careful not to touch him. "First, excellent work, both of you," Tom said. The clients were impressed. "So who won?" Jack asked. Tom leaned back in his chair. "That's the interesting part. They loved elements from both presentations and want to combine them. They've requested that you two work together as co-leads on the account." Kate stared at him in shock. "Co-leads?" "Yes. They feel your different approaches complement each other perfectly." Tom looked between them. "Is that going to be a problem?" "No." They answered simultaneously, then glanced at each other. "Good. You'll need to start immediately. The clients want a revised presentation next week that incorporates the best of both concepts." Tom stood, signaling the end of the meeting. "Congratulations to both of you." In the elevator heading down to share the news with their teams, Kate and Jack stood in silence. When the doors closed, Jack hit the stop button. "What are you doing?" Kate asked, her heart racing as he turned to face her. "So nobody won the bet," he said, moving closer. "I guess not," she replied, backing against the wall. "We'll have to call it off." Jack shook his head, placing his hands on either side of her, trapping her between his arms. "Or we could both ask each other out at the same time." Kate looked up at him, feeling the heat of his body so close to hers. That would be one solution. "Dinner tonight?" he asked, his lips inches from hers. "My place?" she countered, her hands moving to his chest. Jack smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. "I've wanted you since the day you argued with me in our first meeting 3 years ago." "I've wanted you too," Kate admitted, finally letting go of her pride. "I just didn't want to lose to you." "Looks like we're both winners," he murmured before closing the distance and kissing her deeply. The elevator jerked as someone pressed the call button. Jack reluctantly pulled away and released the stop button. As the elevator resumed its descent, Kate straightened her dress, trying to compose herself. "Tonight," she whispered as the doors opened, the promise hanging in the air between them. Kate rushed home after work, her mind racing with thoughts of Jack coming over. She cleaned her apartment quickly, changed the sheets on her bed, and took a long shower. Standing in front of her closet wrapped in a towel, she debated what to wear. Something casual but sexy. She finally chose a soft blue dress that showed off her legs. At 7:30, her doorbell rang. Kate took a deep breath, checked her reflection one last time, and opened the door. Jack stood there with a bottle of wine and a small bouquet of flowers, looking different outside of work, more relaxed in jeans and a button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up. "Hi," she said, suddenly shy despite everything that had happened between them. "Hi," he replied, his eyes taking her in. "You look beautiful." Kate took the flowers. "Thank you. Come in." The initial awkwardness faded as they opened the wine and talked about their team's reactions to the news. Kate had prepared a simple pasta dinner, and they ate at her small dining table, their knees occasionally touching underneath. "So all this time you wanted me?" Kate asked, sipping her wine. "Even when you were arguing with me about the Johnson account last year?" Jack laughed. "Especially then. You were so passionate about your ideas. Your eyes get this intense look when you're fighting for something you believe in." "You noticed my eyes?" Kate felt warmth spreading through her that had nothing to do with the wine. "I noticed everything about you," Jack admitted. "The way you twist your hair when you're thinking, how you always have colored pens for taking notes, the little victory dance you do when you close a deal." "I do not do a victory dance," Kate protested. "You do," Jack insisted with a grin. "It's subtle, but it's there. A little shoulder shimmy." Kate laughed, embarrassed but pleased that he had been watching her so closely. "Well, I noticed things about you too." "Like what?" Jack leaned forward, interested. "Like how you always bring coffee to the intern even though it's not your job, and how you defended Megan's ideas when Tom tried to dismiss them. You act tough, but you're actually kind." Jack looked surprised. "I didn't think you saw me that way." "There's a lot we didn't know about each other," Kate said softly. After dinner, they moved to her couch with their wine. Jack sat close, his arms stretched behind her. "So what happens now?" Kate asked. "We're going to be working together every day. Now we don't have to pretend we're not attracted to each other," Jack said, his fingers playing with a strand of her hair. "It might be complicated," Kate warned. "I like complicated," he replied, leaning closer. "Don't you?" Instead of answering, Kate kissed him softly at first, then with increasing hunger as Jack pulled her onto his lap. His hands moved up her thighs under her dress as she unbuttoned his shirt. The chemistry between them was explosive, 3 years of tension finally finding release. They made it to her bedroom, leaving a trail of clothes behind them. In the dim light, Kate saw Jack's eyes darken as he looked at her naked body. He laid her on the bed gently, kissing every inch of her skin until she was breathless with need. "I've imagined this so many times," he whispered against her neck. "Show me," Kate urged, pulling him closer. Their bodies moved together with the same competitive energy they brought to work, each trying to bring the other more pleasure. Kate arched against him, crying out as waves of sensation washed over her. Jack followed soon after, holding her tightly as if afraid she might disappear. Afterward, they lay tangled together, Kate's head on Jack's chest, listening to his heartbeat slow. His fingers traced lazy patterns on her back. "We should have done this years ago," Jack murmured, kissing the top of her head. "Better late than never," Kate replied, feeling more content than she had in years. They talked for hours, learning the stories behind each other's scars, sharing secrets they'd never told anyone else. It was almost dawn when they finally fell asleep, Kate's body curved perfectly against Jack's, his arms wrapped protectively around her. For the first time, Kate didn't care about winning or losing. This new game they were playing had much better prizes than any work competition. The next week passed in a blur of work and passion. By day, Kate and Jack sat side by side in meetings, professionally presenting their combined ideas to the Wilson team. By night, they could barely keep their hands off each other, exploring this new dimension of their relationship with the same intensity they'd brought to everything else. They had agreed to keep things quiet at work for now. Only knowing smiles from their colleagues hinted that their secret wasn't as well hidden as they thought. Kate found herself looking forward to meetings just to sit near Jack, to feel his leg occasionally press against hers under the table, to exchange secret glances that promised more later. On Friday, they presented their final combined pitch to the clients. Standing together at the front of the room, they moved in perfect sync, finishing each other's sentences and building on each other's ideas. Where Kate was detailed and analytical, Jack was creative and big picture. Together, they were unstoppable. "I think we just witnessed the birth of a dream team," Tom said afterward, clapping them both on the shoulders. The clients loved it. "Consider the Wilson account officially yours," together. At the celebration happy hour that evening, Kate and Jack sat slightly apart, maintaining their professional facade. But across the crowded bar, their eyes kept finding each other. When Jack excused himself to get another drink, Kate's phone buzzed with a text. "Meet me on the roof in 5 minutes." Heart racing, she waited a few moments before slipping away from her colleagues. The rooftop garden was one of her favorite spots, plants and string lights creating a peaceful oasis above the busy city streets. Jack stood by the railing, looking out at the skyline. He turned as she approached, his face softening. "There she is," he said, holding out his hand. "My partner in crime." Kate took his hand, letting him pull her close. "We do make a good team, don't we?" "The best," he agreed, kissing her softly. "I have a confession to make." "What's that?" she asked, looking up at him. Jack's expression turned slightly sheepish. "I might have deliberately messed up part of my original presentation." Kate pulled back, surprised. "What? Why would you do that?" "Because I wanted to lose the bet," he admitted. "I wanted an excuse to ask you out, without risking rejection." "Pretty cowardly, huh?" Kate started laughing. "Oh my God. What's so funny?" "I did the same thing," she confessed. "I changed some of my market research numbers at the last minute. I was hoping to lose too." Jack stared at her in disbelief, then joined in her laughter. "We're both ridiculous. All this time we could have just asked each other out like normal people." Kate finished for him. "Where's the fun in that?" Jack pulled her close again. "I like our story better." Kate wrapped her arms around his neck. "So what happens now?" "Well, we have a big client to manage together. That should keep us busy for a while." "I meant with us," Kate clarified, suddenly feeling vulnerable. Jack's expression turned serious. "Kate, I've spent 3 years competing with you, fighting with you, and secretly wanting you. Now that I have you, I'm not letting go anytime soon." "Is that a promise?" she whispered. "It's more than that," he said, taking her face in his hands. "I love you, Kate, more. I think I have for a long time." Kate felt her heart expand in her chest. "I love you too," she said, the words feeling right and true. "Even when you drive me crazy." "Especially then," he grinned, before kissing her deeply. Later that night, lying in Jack's bed, Kate traced patterns on his chest as he slept beside her. She thought about the strange path that had led them here, from rivals to lovers in the span of a few weeks. The competition that had started it all seemed silly now, yet she wouldn't change a thing. In the soft glow of the bedside lamp, Kate watched Jack's peaceful face. She had always approached life as a series of contests to be won, competitors to be beaten. But now she understood that sometimes the greatest victory came from surrender, from letting someone else into your heart completely. As Jack's arms tightened around her in his sleep, Kate smiled to herself. In this game they had created together, there were no losers, only two people who had finally found what they had been competing for all along, each other.